Section 584. Deleted portion. Now, I have a few remarks to make. When Robert is finished with his own book, and I am done with mine, a vacation should come in any case, and will be not only acceptable, but most beneficial. His attitude is changing, and has been, and with your help, it can change for the better. Any fear is not of vexation. While it is not now specifically related to particular past events, it is still related to past training, where he was led to believe that he must keep a tight rein upon himself, not go ahead full blast, and restrain the spontaneous parts of the personality, unless they showed themselves in acceptable fashion. Poetry was acceptable. In other areas, he feared that the spontaneous self could lead to childbirth. In the psyche area, he was afraid it could lead to falsehood. Much more, for example, than he feared anything like schizophrenia. With you, for a while, he felt the spontaneous self brought you only trouble, as per the Florida trip, and so forth, and that he had better learn to control it. When you were ill and did not have sexual relations often, he feared that his desires then could even lead him to physical unfaithfulness, and so on all counts the habit of repression and of physical repression also built up. All areas of life were to some extent included then. Spiritually, he felt that he might be leading people astray. The symptoms were the result of strain then, while they still allowed him to pursue those activities in which he was interested. The conscientious nature, the questioning mind that led him to investigate psychic realities, and that led him to learn so much, did not change overnight. They were of much too long standing. They continued to question this experience as they had every other, and to apply the same over-conscientious tests toward truth. The sale of the book and his influence led him to question anew that if he had such influence, it had better be based upon legitimate truth. Rob asked, "Does he think it is?" Seth said, "He thinks basically that it is, and he accepts the basic principles of the work. That is, the set material. He still finds reincarnation difficult to accept, but this is not the only sole point. Give us time. He sometimes is confused about the God concept also. He accepts the source of the material as beyond his usual self. If he were not committed to the material, he would have ceased the sessions long ago. Do you have other questions now along this line?" Rob asked, "Do you mean for chapter 20? Seth said, "No, personal material. The habit of thinking, again, is the point here. Ruber's pattern of thinking." Rob asked, "Do ESP classes aggravate his symptoms?" Seth said, "As a rule, they do not, unless they touch upon the points mentioned above, or when they do." Rob asked, "When the set material was published, and we went on tour, did this revive or intensify his fears about leading people astray?" Seth said, In the beginning, if you recall, he made little effort to have the material published, or even to deal with the material itself in those terms. His first book dealt with your experiments, done on your own in the main, and with their results. This happened, that happened. People could accept or reject. The material represented a body of teaching, which was at variance not only with his own childhood religious background, but, to some extent, with the intellectual ideas of early adulthood. He made the jump to publish the teachings, to that extent, so far. Then he realized that the coverage given on your tool, the people being reached, and so then again he wondered. He was also using his writing ability, or putting his writing ability at the hand of the material. Then again, it had better been legitimate, since it was obvious he was being interviewed as a psychic who wrote, rather than as a writer with psychic abilities. It made his position clear to him in the world's eyes, he thought. He did enjoy the publicity and the experience, however, and he did, as mentioned, feel let down by printed later. He did not like the Washington show at all, or the circumstances, and was upset by that. Rob noted the second trip. Rob asked, "What do you think will happen with the next two books? The one he's finishing now, the dream book, and your own book?" Seth said, the initial response was the strongest one, of course, because it was his first experience along those lines. Also, he has grown to know himself more since then. Rob said, but the symptoms have intensified. Seth said, the other information I have given you about the symptoms also applies here, in the deleted sessions, since your return. Now, there is some more information I can give you concerning the weather. I suggest, however, that you take a break, or I will give you the information in our next session as you prefer. Rob said, we'll take the break. Seth said, now, I will not keep you. Your own statement, of course, was quite true as to the concentration on negative aspects. Rob noted, since supper time. Seth said, but both of your attitudes have definitely improved. Now, Rupert's weight gain is a prerequisite for continued improvement, and happened also once in the past before the more recent negative aspects. At that previous time, the weight gain preceded improvement. I will not go deeply into the weather angle now because of the hour. There are 2 points here, however. The physical condition reacts to some extent weather-wise in that, as Rupert Piper said, muscles behave differently. In the case of the strong active muscles, this is hardly perceptible. If there is any difficulty, it simply becomes more noticeable and can be minimized to a large extent through a different mental attitude. But it does exist. Secondly, your moods are affected by weather, all kinds. As you know, you form it to begin with. There is a constant interaction. Through association in periods of depression, a connection can be built up. a habitual pattern in which bad weather suggests depression, and vice versa. There are also electromagnetic changes in the atmosphere, constantly affecting the body. And if the body is worried for whatever reason, it is more sensitive to these. Take a poor day, a dark day for example, a poor habitual reaction, a handful of negative suggestions, and some symptoms, and it does not add up too much. Understanding this, however, will let Robert take some counting measures, as he did today by thinking of how cozy it was inside to work, and how comforting the rain sounded. Now, I bid you a fond good evening, whether or not you enjoyed it very much. Rob said, "It was very instructive. Thank you very much, Seth. Good night." Seth said, "You have been working well together." Rob said, "Yes." Rob noted, Jen's strength was again good. She said Seth was very affectionate tonight, that it was one of those nights.